Hello there. How are you tonight? Before we begin, gently dim the lights, get comfortable, and let the noise of the day slowly fade away. And if you enjoy these slow, quiet journeys into the past, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. So there's always another relaxing story waiting for you when sleep feels just out of reach, and let me know in the comments. Where are you watching from tonight? It's always fascinating to see how many different places come together in these quiet moments. Now, imagine standing in the shadow of a massive stone arena. The air is warm. The distant sound of a crowd lingers. And beneath your feet, the ground feels worn from countless footsteps. This is the world of ancient Rome, the place of power, spectacle, and quiet tension. But you are not here as a spectator. You are here as a gladiator. Your days are not filled with glory, but with routine, discipline, and uncertainty. Behind the arena walls, life is slower, quieter, and far more fragile than history often remembers. Tonight, we will gently step into that hidden world and explore what it was truly like to live as a Roman gladiator. So relax. Take a slow breath, and let's drift into the quiet shadows of ancient Rome. The arena rises above you like a mountain of stone. Vast, silent, and waiting. Even when empty, it does not feel lifeless. It feels as though it remembers. The faint echo of footsteps, the murmur of distant voices, the soft scrape of sand shifting under weight long gone, all of it lingers here. Just beneath the surface, from the outside, the structure is magnificent. Perfect arches, towering walls, banners that move gently in the breeze. To the people of Rome, this place is a symbol of strength, entertainment, and order. But from where you stand, in its shadow, it feels different. Heavier, closer, more personal, because this is not a place you visit. This is a place you belong to. Somewhere beyond these walls, the city continues as normal. Merchants call out across busy streets. Children run through narrow alleys. Fountains spill water endlessly into worn stone basins. Life moves forward, bright and alive. But here, the world feels slower, muted, as if time itself has decided to soften its pace. You begin to notice the smaller things, the texture of the ground beneath your feet. Rough, uneven, the faint scent of dust and iron carried in the air, the distant creak of wood. Somewhere unseen. Nothing rushes here, nothing needs to, because everything is already decided. There is a rhythm to this place. One that does not change, not with the seasons, not with the crowds, not even with the passing of lives. And slowly, you begin to understand something. The arena is not just a structure, it is a system, a quiet, unyielding machine that continues turning day after day, regardless of who steps into it. And now, you are part of that rhythm, not by choice, perhaps, or maybe by a choice made long ago, in a moment that felt distant even then. But however you arrived here, it no longer matters, because the moment you step into this world, your past begins to fade, not completely, just enough that it feels harder to hold on to. Names become quieter, memories soften, and what remains is something simpler, something narrower. You begin to think not in years, but in days, not in dreams, but in moments. The next sunrise, the next meal, the next command, and somewhere in the distance, the next time the gates will open. You glance upward, toward the towering edge of the arena. From here, you cannot see the seats, only the sky beyond, a pale, endless stretch of blue. It feels far away, almost unreachable, and yet it is always there, watching, waiting, just like the people who will one day fill those seats. But for now, there is only quiet, a strange, steady quiet that settles over everything. It is not peaceful, but it is not chaotic either. It is something in between, a calm that carries weight, a stillness that feels permanent, and in that stillness, your new life begins, not with a grand moment, not with a sudden change, but with something much softer, a realization that behind the spectacle, behind the noise and the cheering and the stories told by others, there is another world entirely, a quieter one, a slower one, a world of waiting and watching and enduring. And tonight, as the light begins to fade and the shadows grow longer, you take your first step deeper into it, not toward the arena itself, but away from it, toward the place where your days will truly be spent. The place where gladiators live, train, and quietly prepare, the place known as the ludus. And as you walk, the sounds of the outside world grow softer, until all that remains is the steady rhythm of your footsteps and the quiet, unknown path ahead. The path that led you here was not a single road, it was many. Some began in distant lands, under unfamiliar skies, where the language sounded different and the customs felt far from Rome. Others began much closer, in the quiet corners of the city itself, where life once felt ordinary, even predictable. But no matter where the journey started, they all seem to end in the same place. Here, within these walls, you begin to notice them now. The others, not as a crowd, but as individuals, each one carrying something unseen, a past, a memory, a silence. Some sit quietly, their backs against cold stone walls, eyes lowered, as if still adjusting to the weight of their new reality. Others move slowly, deliberately, as though every step is measured, every movement controlled. There is no urgency here, no one rushes, because there is nowhere to rush to, and in that stillness, you begin to wonder, who were they? Before this, one man, standing near the edge of the courtyard, has the posture of someone who once held authority. His shoulders remain straight, his gaze steady. Even now, perhaps he was a soldier not long ago. He may have stood in formation, surrounded by others just like him, following orders that felt clear and certain. But something changed, a battle lost, a command broken, or simply the wrong place at the wrong time. And now he stands here, not as a protector of Rome, but as something else entirely. Nearby, another figure sits quietly on the ground. You can tell, even without looking too closely, that he is not from here. His features, his posture, even the way he watches the world around him, all feel different, captured, perhaps, taken from a place far beyond the edges of the empire, brought here not by choice, but by force. His silence feels deeper. He does not look at the arena, he does not look at the others. Instead, his gaze drifts somewhere distant, as if part of him never truly arrived. And then, there are those who chose this life, though choice may not be the right word. A man leans against a column, arms folded, expression unreadable. There is something unusual about him, not fear, not confusion, but something closer to acceptance. Perhaps he came here willingly, drawn by the promise of food, shelter, or coin, or maybe he had nothing left to lose. For some, this life was not taken from them, it was the only life that remained, and so they stepped into it, quietly, without resistance. As you look around, the differences between them begin to blur, because here, those past lives carry less weight. Titles, homes, names, they fade, not all at once, but slowly, like a memory that becomes harder to recall with each passing day. What replaces them is simpler, a shared understanding, not spoken, but felt, each person here has crossed a threshold, a moment where the world they knew ended, and this one began. There are no announcements, no ceremonies, just a quiet shift, a subtle realization that life has narrowed into something more controlled, more contained. Even time feels different here. It no longer stretches forward into distant plans, it settles into shorter spans. The next day, the next instruction, the next breath. You notice how little is said between them. Words exist, but they are used carefully, as if speaking too much might disturb the fragile balance that holds everything together. Instead, communication happens in smaller ways, a glance, a nod, the briefest acknowledgement that says, "I understand," and somehow that is enough, because in this place, explanations are unnecessary. Everyone already knows. You shift your gaze once more, taking in the quiet courtyard, the worn stone, the faint sounds echoing from somewhere unseen, and you begin to understand something deeper. This place does not ask who you were. It does not care where you came from. It does not measure your past. It only shapes what you will become, slowly, quietly, day by day, and as the light begins to soften, stretching long shadows across the ground, you feel it settle in, that quiet, inescapable truth, that no matter how different the paths were, they have all led here, to the same beginning, not of a story filled with glory, but of one defined by endurance, and somewhere nearby, beyond these walls, a gate creaks softly in the distance, not loudly, not suddenly, just enough to be noticed, a reminder that the next step is already waiting. The gates of the ludus creak quietly as you push them open. Inside, the world feels smaller, contained. The air smells faintly of dust, sweat, and stone, a scent that is both unsettling and familiar. The sunlight filters in through narrow openings, scattering in golden beams that land on worn floors and cold walls. Nothing here is loud. Nothing here is bright. And yet, everything seems significant. Every sound, every movement, even the faintest echo, carries weight. You notice the layout immediately. A central courtyard surrounded by low buildings, each door leading to rooms filled with shadow and muted light. In the distance, you hear the soft scrape of sandals on stone, the dull thump of wood against wood, as if the building itself is practicing alongside its inhabitants. The ludus is alive, but in a quiet, measured way. As you step further in, your eyes adjust. You see figures moving slowly, deliberately. Some are already in the rhythm of training, swinging wooden swords with precision and repetition. Others sit quietly, observing, waiting for their turn, their faces calm yet alert. You realize this is more than a school. It is a system, a life designed to strip away hesitation and forge endurance. One quiet, disciplined step at a time, you are guided by a soft murmur of voices, instructions delivered not as commands, but as steady, unhurried guidance. Hold your stance. Breathe. Steady. Steady. The words float through the air like a gentle wind. They are repeated, almost without emphasis, and yet they hold authority that cannot be ignored. Every trainee seems to absorb them, as if the sound itself were shaping their bodies and minds. In the corner, a trainer moves with calculated grace, correcting a posture here, adjusting a grip there. There is no anger, no shouting. Only a quiet insistence, a steady pressure that feels more like the weight of expectation than the lash of punishment. You notice the trainees' faces as they obey, calm, concentrated, silent. Fear may exist here, but it is hidden beneath layers of learned composure. As you follow the path deeper into the ludus, the sound changes. The distant clang of metal is replaced by soft footfalls, the faint rustle of fabric, and the occasional exhale of effort. There is a rhythm to the building itself, a heartbeat that seems to guide your pace, to remind you that you are not alone, yet entirely responsible for the steps you take. the rooms themselves are sparsely furnished: wooden beams, straw mats, a few scattered training implements. Light falls softly on the surfaces, illuminating dust motes that drift lazily in the air. Every corner seems to whisper of past trainees, of countless repetitions, of years spent mastering the body as much as the mind. There is a timelessness here. A quiet sense that each person who enters will become part of something larger, whether they want to or not, and then you notice the trainees' eyes. Some meet yours briefly, others do not. Each gaze carries a small story: uncertainty, curiosity, resolve, or the barest trace of resignation. It is in these eyes, more than in any training or instruction, that you sense the true challenge of this place. For here, the ludus does not merely teach combat. It teaches patience, endurance, and the art of existing within constraints. It molds not just the body, but the inner rhythm of life. The air grows warmer as you move toward the central courtyard. Sunlight touches the faces of trainees mid-practice, casting their shadows long across the ground. The stillness is punctuated only by slow, deliberate movements: a breath exhaled, a footfall on stone. In this quiet, you realize that entering the ludus is less about stepping into a school, and more about stepping into a new way of being. One that is slower, controlled, and measured, yet full of tension beneath its calm exterior. For a moment, you pause. You take in the weight of the space, the silence, the rhythm of unseen lives moving in harmony with your own. And as you breathe in the cool, muted air, a strange understanding begins to settle in: the ludus is both a sanctuary and a cage. It shapes those who enter, whether they wish it or not. And in the quiet of its walls, life moves on. Softly, deliberately, waiting for the moment when the first true trial will arrive. Time in the ludus moves differently than anywhere else. It is not measured by clocks or hours, but by routines that have existed long before you arrived, and will continue long after you leave. Each day begins quietly, unfolds deliberately, and closes without fanfare. There is a rhythm here, subtle yet insistent, guiding every movement, every breath, every thought. You wake before dawn. The sky is barely lighter than the wall surrounding you, a soft gray fading slowly to pale gold. Your body is still heavy with sleep, but the courtyard is already stirring. Figures move silently along the stone paths, adjusting weapons, stretching, preparing for the day. The faint scrape of sandals on stone and the muted murmur of instructions create a gentle percussion that sets the pace for all that follows. Each section of the day is defined by tasks. Training is never random. Every swing of a sword, every practice thrust, every movement of the body serves a purpose. You notice how the structure allows for repetition without monotony, a slow accumulation of skill that becomes instinct over time. Even mundane tasks, sweeping the floor, tending to equipment, or carrying water, are approached with precision, a quiet discipline that gradually fills the day. Meals are structured with the same care. Food is simple but sustaining, carefully measured for endurance. Bread, porridge, occasional meat or vegetables, everything is consumed with awareness. You see trainees eating slowly, speaking little, learning the subtle art of nourishment as part of preparation for endurance. Even the act of eating is a moment of reflection, a quiet pause within the steady cadence of life. Rest, too, has its place. It is not chaotic or indulgent, it is structured and intentional. Short breaks between training sessions are spent quietly, sometimes alone, sometimes in soft conversation. Eyes meet briefly, nods are exchanged, but the stillness remains. There is no rush, no frantic energy. The pace itself teaches patience, a slow shaping of body and mind to endure what is to come. The ludus is a small world, isolated yet complete. Its walls contain everything necessary: sleeping quarters, training spaces, courtyards, and small rooms for instruction. You notice how this containment mirrors the life it enforces, a life bound by structure, repetition, and measured expectation. Freedom exists only within these limits, and those who thrive learn to move gracefully along the invisible paths laid out for them, and yet, there is room for observation and quiet reflection. The subtle shifting of sunlight across the courtyard, the soft echo of footsteps in the hallways, the way shadows lengthen and fold over worn stone, these details are as important as the exercises themselves. The ludus teaches not only movement, but awareness. Each day is a lesson in the measured unfolding of time, a meditation disguised as labor. By midday, the courtyard hums gently with coordinated effort. Movements are precise, yet there is a softness to them, a controlled energy that never becomes chaos. You realize that the structure is not merely about training for combat. It is about survival in its slowest, most deliberate form. Each task, each repetition, each quiet moment of observation builds the stamina, physical and mental, that is required to endure the arena beyond these walls. As dusk approaches, the rhythm begins to wind down. Tasks are completed with careful attention, equipment is cleaned and stored, and the final practice movements echo faintly across the stone. The trainees move slowly now, shadows stretching long, mingling with the soft light of the setting sun. There is a satisfaction here, not from accomplishment or praise, but from the quiet understanding that the day has been lived fully within the boundaries set by the ludus, and as night falls, the walls absorb the calm. Silence returns, but it is not empty, it is full of potential, memory, and the faint heartbeat of anticipation for tomorrow. In this structure, this rhythm, you begin to understand that life here is less about chaos and spectacle, and more about endurance. Subtle, unending, quiet endurance. The world is still dark when your eyes first open. Outside, the sky is a deep grey blue, barely hinting at the approaching day. The first light has not yet arrived, but the ludus is already awake. Faint sounds ripple through the stone walls, footsteps on cold floors, the soft scrape of wood against stone, the quiet sigh of someone stretching muscles stiff from yesterday's work. Each noise is deliberate, precise, yet gentle, like a heartbeat echoing softly in the early hours. You rise slowly, the coolness of the stone beneath your feet grounding you. Every step feels heavier than it will later, when the sun warms the walls and the courtyard fills with motion. But there is a strange calm in this pre-dawn world, a stillness that the bustle of the day will never hold. Here, in the quiet, the rhythm of life is intimate. You notice the faint outline of other trainees, moving like shadows across the walls, their presence felt more than seen. The air is thick with anticipation, though it is silent and almost imperceptible. Each breath you take seems louder in a hush, your pulse a slow drum matching the subtle creaks of the building. Somewhere in the distance, the trainer's voice emerges, soft but firm, guiding someone through the motions of stretching. It is barely audible, like a whisper carried by the wind, but it holds authority. It is enough to remind you that the day has begun. Even before the sun rises, you move to your place, joining the others with quiet attention. Muscles stretch, joints awaken, and the body begins to remember itself. There is no rush, no urgency. Only the patient unfolding of each limb, each movement, each small repetition that prepares you for what is to come. The day is not yet visible, but its shape is already etched into the space around you, in the worn stone, in the echoes of past mornings, in the faint scent of dust and wood. Outside, the horizon begins to glow softly. Pale light seeps into the courtyard, casting long, muted shadows that stretch across the stone. The air warms slightly, carrying the faint hint of morning mist. The world is not yet awake, but the promise of day touches everything. It is in these quiet moments, before instruction begins, that the mind can wander. You find yourself thinking of the past, of distant places, of lives left behind, small, fleeting thoughts that fade as the day asserts itself. Breakfast will come soon. Training will begin. The courtyard will fill with sound. But for now, there is only this: the cool air on your skin, the steady rhythm of movement, the soft light of dawn brushing against stone and flesh alike. There is a meditation here, unspoken and unhurried. A recognition that even the harshest lives can hold small pockets of serenity. Each face you pass carries the same quiet awareness. Eyes meet briefly, acknowledging existence without intrusion. Every gesture is restrained, yet deliberate. Even in this early hour, there is a subtle hierarchy, a silent understanding that patience is as vital as strength, and endurance is measured not only in the body but in the mind. The day will stretch long and demanding, yet this first hour, before the sun fully rises, before the world outside intrudes, is sacred. It teaches the smallest lesson of all, that life, even in confinement and discipline, can hold moments of calm. The quiet prelude of dawn is an invitation to observe, to breathe, to exist fully within each fleeting instant. And as the first true light spills across the courtyard, bathing the walls in muted gold and amber, you feel it settle in, a gentle certainty that the day has begun, and you are ready, quietly and deliberately, to meet it. The courtyard is quiet now, yet alive in its own subtle way. Wooden swords strike air and stone with soft, muffled thuds. Muscles strain and relax in a rhythm almost imperceptible. There is no shouting, no cheering, no clanging of metal against metal. Only the quiet hum of focus, the slow, deliberate cadence of bodies learning to move as one with their own limbs. You stand among them, noticing how every motion is controlled. Each swing of the weapon is measured, each step intentional. The silence is not emptiness, it is presence, awareness heightened to a fine point. In this quiet, there is no distraction, no room for faltering. Every trainee's mind must remain engaged, alert to the smallest detail. Yet calm enough to absorb repetition without frustration. The trainer moves among you, a shadow of authority, correcting posture with a subtle gesture, a light touch. His eyes sweep the group with quiet scrutiny, catching imbalance, tension, hesitation. No words are raised, yet his presence fills the space, guiding, shaping, molding the body and mind. Every trainee senses it instinctively. The instruction is continuous, even when unspoken. The rhythm of training is hypnotic. Wood strikes wood, feet shuffle across stone, a soft breath of exertion escapes here and there. You begin to notice the pattern, not of combat, but of endurance, precision, and control. Each motion, repeated hundreds of times, becomes a meditation. The mind quiets, focusing entirely on the body, the weapon, the subtle shifts of balance and weight. Time stretches strangely here. Hours feel like minutes, yet minutes carry the weight of hours. There is no rush, no urgency. The purpose is repetition, refinement, mastery through quiet persistence. You begin to understand that every trainee is engaged in a dialogue with themselves, testing limits, discovering resilience in silence. Even small movements carry significance. A shift in stance, a tightening of the grip, the alignment of shoulders and feet, each is a word in an unspoken language, a step in a conversation between mind and body. You realize that in this quiet, nothing is wasted, nothing is overlooked. Every effort accumulates, unseen but indelible. Occasionally, a trainee pauses, not from fatigue, but from reflection. Eyes close for a heartbeat, breath slows, posture held still. It is as if the body is listening, remembering, learning. There is beauty in this stillness, a subtle artistry in the repetition. The courtyard itself seems to absorb it, the worn stone, the faded walls, the drifting dust suspended in beams of morning light, all witnesses to this silent ritual. You notice the trainees around you. Their faces are calm, expressions focused, yet beneath the composed exterior lies effort and struggle. Every bead of sweat, every minor tremor in a limb, every suppressed sigh, tells a story of endurance. And yet, it is quiet. The struggle is internal, a personal dialogue with the limits of the body and mind. The silence is never broken by unnecessary words. Occasionally, a gentle command is issued, a breath, a hand gesture, a glance, and the flow continues uninterrupted. The training is a river, steady, patient, carrying all who participate along its path without abrupt interruptions, as the morning light shifts, filtering softly through open doorways and archways. You feel it too, the subtle rhythm of the ludus, the pulse of silent effort, the meditation of repetition. Here, life is less about spectacle and more about the quiet mastery of the self. Strength is built not in noise, but in stillness, concentration, and persistence. And when the first bell of midday approaches, signaling the end of this session, the silence slowly lifts. The trainees stand, brushing dust from themselves, but the calm remains. You feel it settle into your body, into your mind, a deep, almost meditative awareness. The courtyard, the walls, the faint smell of dust and wood, all carry the imprint of this silent labor. Here, you realize, the ludus teaches more than combat. It teaches endurance of the body, patience of the mind, and the quiet art of persistence. And as you rest for a brief moment before the next session, you understand that even in the absence of noise, life moves with purpose, deliberate and unhurried, shaping all who enter its walls. The weapons are introduced slowly, not with ceremony, not with excitement, but with quiet familiarity. They are placed before you as objects first, not as tools of spectacle, and certainly not as instruments of violence. Just weight, shape, balance. You notice how each one feels different, even before lifting it. Some are heavier, grounded, demanding steadiness, others are lighter, quicker, requiring precision rather than strength, and as you reach forward, your hand hesitates for a moment. Not out of fear, but out of awareness. Because here, even the smallest choice begins to shape what you will become. Around you, the others are doing the same, selecting, observing, adjusting their grip in silence. No one speaks, there is no need, the weapons themselves seem to carry their own language. One that each trainee must learn to understand slowly, patiently. A trainer walks between you. His presence steady, unhurried, he does not assign immediately, instead. He watches how you stand, how you reach, how you hold the weight, as if the choice is not entirely yours. But something revealed through you. Eventually, guidance comes. Soft, almost unnoticed, a slight motion of the hand, a quiet redirection, and just like that, a path begins to form. You notice that each style, each role, carries its own rhythm. Some require distance, space between you and your imagined opponent. Others bring you closer, narrowing that space until movement becomes smaller, more contained. But even here, in these differences, there is no urgency, no clash, no performance, only repetition, slow, deliberate, endless repetition. Wooden weapons meet softly, more like an echo than an impact. Shields are raised, lowered, adjusted again. Footsteps trace the same patterns across the stone, over and over, until the body begins to remember without thinking. And as you move, you begin to feel it, not strength, not skill, but alignment, a quiet understanding between your body and the object in your hand. It is not immediate, it does not arrive all at once, it builds gradually. Through stillness as much as movement, you begin to notice others more clearly now, each one moving within their own rhythm. One figure practices with a large shield, movements grounded and steady, like the slow shifting of stone. Another moves more lightly, stepping carefully, almost drifting across the ground. There is no comparison, no competition, only difference, and that difference is accepted without question, because here, Your role is not chosen for display, it is shaped for endurance. The trainer pauses near you once more, his gaze lingers. Not critically, but thoughtfully, he adjusts your stance slightly. Just a fraction, and suddenly, everything feels more balanced. Not easier, but clearer. You repeat the movement again, and again, and again, until the motion begins to lose its edges. Becoming smoother, quieter, more natural. Time fades, the courtyard remains, the same light, the same shadows, the same soft rhythm of wood against wood, and somewhere within that repetition, something shifts. You are no longer simply holding a weapon, you are learning to move with it, to carry it. Not as a burden, but as an extension of yourself, not for spectacle, not for display, but for survival, and in that quiet realization, the purpose of these tools becomes something else entirely, not instruments of chaos, but instruments of control, of discipline, of patience. The session continues. Unbroken, unhurried, and as the light slowly shifts across the courtyard, you begin to understand that what is being built here is not just skill, but identity, shaped not in moments of intensity, but in long stretches of quiet, careful repetition. And when at last the trainer signals a pause, it comes gently, almost unnoticed. The weapons are lowered, placed back where they began, not discarded, but returned, with care, with awareness, as if they, too, are part of the rhythm. And as you step back, hands still carrying the memory of their weight, you realize something quietly unsettling, that the weapon you held for only a short time already feels familiar. You begin to understand his presence. Before you fully understand his role, he does not announce himself, he does not need to. His authority exists quietly, woven into the rhythm of the ludus itself, from the moment you wake to the moment the day fades. He is there, not always close, not always visible, but always present. You notice it first in the way others respond, a slight straightening of posture as he passes, a movement corrected before he even speaks. It's a silence that deepens. Not out of fear, but awareness. He walks slowly through the courtyard. His steps measured, unhurried. There is no urgency in him, no raised voice, no sharp command cutting through the air. And yet, nothing escapes his attention. A misplaced foot, a weak grip, a moment of hesitation. He sees it all, and when he intervenes, it is almost gentle, a hand placed lightly on your shoulder, a small adjustment to your stance, a quiet word, spoken close enough that only you can hear. Again, that is all. No explanation, no praise, no criticism, just repetition, and somehow, that single word carries more weight than 100 commands, because here, correction is not about instruction, it is about expectation. You begin to feel it slowly, not as pressure from outside, but as something that settles within you, a quiet need to meet the standard that has been set. Even if it is never fully spoken, the trainer does not demand perfection, he assumes it, and in that assumption, you are shaped. You start to notice how little he repeats himself. A correction given once is expected to remain. Mistakes are not punished loudly, they are simply not acknowledged again, and that silence becomes its own form of guidance. You learn quickly, not because you are forced, but because you begin to understand what is required. Without being told, around you, the others move with the same awareness, each action carried out with care, each movement refined. Not for display, but to avoid falling out of rhythm, because here, standing out is not the goal, blending into the discipline is. The trainer pauses at the edge of the courtyard, watching, always watching. His gaze does not linger too long on any one person. Yet it feels as though it sees everything at once. There is no hostility in it, no anger, only assessment, as if each of you is part of something being carefully shaped. Over time, you begin to understand that his authority is not built on fear. It is built on consistency, on presence, on the quiet certainty that nothing here happens without purpose, even the structure of the day. The repetition, the stillness, all of it flows through him, not as control imposed, but as order maintained, and slowly. Almost without noticing, you begin to carry that structure within yourself. You correct your own movements, you adjust your own posture, you anticipate what is expected before it is spoken, and in doing so, something shifts, the need for instruction begins to fade, replaced by something quieter, something internal. The trainer walks past you once more, this time. He says nothing, he does not stop, he does not gesture, but you feel it, that brief moment of passing, where his presence lingers just long enough to be felt, and somehow, that is enough, because in this place, authority does not need to be loud to be absolute, it does not need to be seen to be understood, it exists in the rhythm of the day, in the repetition of movement, in the silence between words, and as the training continues. Steady, unbroken, you realize something quietly profound, that the trainer is not just shaping how you fight, he is shaping how you think, how you move, how you exist. Within these walls, and perhaps beyond them. The meal does not begin with hunger, it begins with routine. You are called not by appetite, but by timing. The courtyard gradually empties. Footsteps soften. And one by one, the trainees move toward a shaded space along the inner wall of the ludus. There is no rush. No crowding. Just a steady, quiet flow. Like water finding its place, the air here feels different, warmer. Still. Carrying the faint scent of grain and fire, you take your place among the others, sitting on a low stone bench. The surface is cool beneath you, grounding. Around you, no one speaks. Not because silence is required, but because it has become natural. Food is brought simply, no decoration, no excess. Just what is needed, a wooden bowl is placed into your hands. It is heavier than it looks. Warm to the touch. Inside, a thick porridge made from barley. Slow cooked until it holds a quiet density. Beside it, a piece of coarse bread. Slightly rough. Meant to last, not to please, you pause for a moment before eating, not out of ceremony, but awareness. This is not a meal of comfort, it is a meal of purpose. Around you, others begin slowly, no one eats quickly, each movement is measured. Deliberate, spoons lift. Pause. Return, bread is broken carefully. Without haste, there is something almost meditative in the way it happens. You take your first bite, the taste is simple. Plain. Grounded, no strong flavors, no sweetness, just nourishment, and yet it fills something deeper than hunger, because here, food is not about enjoyment, it is about continuation, strength built quietly. Over time, you begin to notice how this moment fits into the rhythm of the day, training. Rest. Nourishment, not separate, but connected, each one supporting the next. In a cycle that repeats without interruption, across from you, a trainee eats with steady focus, his posture remains upright. Even now, there is no collapse into rest, no release. Even in stillness. Discipline remains, another tears his bread slowly, dipping it into the bowl. His movements almost absent-minded. As if the body knows what to do without instruction, and perhaps it does. You realize something quietly important, that strength here is not built in bursts, not in moments of intensity, but in consistency, in small, repeated actions. A meal like this, taken day after day, becomes part of the body itself, unremarkable in the moment, but essential over time. There are no conversations about taste, no discussions of preference, because preference has no place here, only function, only purpose, and yet there is a strange comfort in that simplicity. A relief, almost, nothing to decide, nothing to question, just the quiet act of sustaining yourself. A jug is passed slowly between you, water. Cool and clear, you drink carefully, not deeply, not greedily, but enough, always enough. The rhythm remains unbroken, even here. As the meal continues, the light shifts slightly, moving across the courtyard walls. Soft and slow, time does not stop, it flows gently. Like everything else in this place, when you finish, there is no signal, no announcement, just a natural ending. Bowls are set aside, hands rest for a moment, and then, one by one, the trainees rise, the stillness lingers. Just a little longer, as if the body is absorbing what it has received. Not just food, but pause, then the movement begins again, back to the courtyard, back to the rhythm, and as you walk, you feel it, subtle, quiet, but real, a steadiness in your body, not strength as power, but strength as endurance, as continuation, and in that moment, you begin to understand something that is never spoken, that here, survival is not built in the arena, it is built in places like this, in quiet meals, in simple routines, in the unnoticed moments that slowly shape what you become. Pain does not arrive suddenly here, it does not announce itself, it settles in. Slowly. Quietly. Like everything else in this place, at first, it is easy to ignore, a slight tension in the arm, a stiffness in the legs, the faint ache that follows repetition after repetition. Nothing sharp. Nothing alarming. Just a presence. Subtle. Persistent, you continue, because everyone else does, around you, the rhythm of training remains unchanged. Movement steady. Breathing controlled. No one pauses. At least not for long. And so you learn. Not through instruction, but through observation. That pain is not something to react to, it is something to carry. You begin to notice it more clearly as the days pass. The way your hands feel heavier when you lift the wooden sword, the slight delay in your steps as your body adjusts, the quiet resistance in your muscles. Asking, gently, to rest, but rest, here, is measured, given in small portions, never enough to erase the strain completely. Only enough to allow you to continue. In a shaded corner of the ludus, there is a space where the pace slows even further, a place where those who can no longer maintain the rhythm step aside, not dramatically, not with urgency, just a quiet withdrawal. You find yourself there one day, not by choice, but by necessity. You sit, the stone beneath you cool against your skin, for a moment. Everything feels still. The sounds of training continue in the distance. Softened. Almost distant, and in that space, you become aware of your body in a different way, not as something to control, but as something that carries memory, every movement from the days before. Still present. Stored in muscle. In bone. In breath. Nearby, another trainee sits in silence, his arm resting loosely at his side, no bandage, no visible injury, and yet you can see it in the way he holds himself, carefully, as if even stillness requires effort. There are no complaints, no expressions of discomfort, not because the pain is absent, but because it is understood, shared, accepted. A figure moves quietly through this space, not a trainer, not a guard, but someone who tends. Rather than instructs, his hands move gently. Applying simple remedies, cloth soaked in cool water, herbs crushed into paste, nothing elaborate, nothing excessive, just enough, always just enough. When he reaches you, he does not ask questions, he observes, a brief pause, then a hand. Steady. Practiced. Pressing lightly against your arm, not to test, but to understand. You do not speak, neither does he, because here. Explanation is unnecessary, the body tells its own story, and those who listen already know how to respond. The treatment is quiet, almost unnoticeable, a cool sensation, a brief moment of relief, and then it passes, leaving behind something softer, not the absence of pain, but a shift in it, something more manageable, more distant. Time moves slowly here, slower than anywhere else in the ludus, because this is where the rhythm pauses. Just slightly, where effort gives way. Not to rest, but to recovery. You sit longer than expected. Watching, listening, noticing how others return. One by one. To the courtyard, not fully healed, not completely restored, but ready. Enough, and eventually. You rise as well, carefully, testing your balance, your strength. It is not the same as before, but it is still there, and that is enough, as you step back into the light. The sounds of training grow clearer again, the rhythm resumes, unchanged, unaffected, as if nothing had interrupted it, and in that moment, you understand something quietly profound, that here, pain is not an obstacle, it is part of the structure, woven into the rhythm of each day, not to be avoided, not to be feared, but to be endured, managed, carried forward. And as you take your place once more, lifting the weight in your hands, you realize that recovery is not about returning to what you were, it is about continuing as you are. The arena is not always filled with noise, sometimes it waits, and so do you, not in the sand, not under the open sky, but behind it all, in the spaces that are never seen. The corridors, the chambers, the still places where time seems to slow and stretch. You sit on a low wooden bench, the air is cooler here, heavier, touched by stone and shadow, somewhere far above. Faint sounds drift downward. A distant murmur, not loud enough to understand, only enough to remind you that something exists beyond these walls. But here, there is no urgency, no movement, only waiting. You are not alone, others sit nearby, some with heads lowered, eyes resting on the ground, others staring ahead, unfocused, as if looking at something far beyond the walls. No one speaks, because there is nothing to say, words would only disturb the stillness. And the stillness has its own purpose. You begin to notice the small details, the slow rise and fall of breath, the way hands rest on knees, unmoving, the soft shift of weight. As someone adjusts their posture, time does not pass in minutes here, it passes in sensations, in the quiet awareness of being. Between moments, you do not know when you will be called, there is no signal, no warning, only the understanding that eventually it will happen, and so your body remains ready, not tense, not rigid, but prepared, a quiet readiness. Held just beneath the surface, a gate stands at the far end of the chamber, closed, still, its surface worn smooth by years, by hands, by time. Every so often, someone glances toward it, not out of fear, but out of awareness. It is the threshold, the place where waiting ends, and something else begins. A man sits beside you, his expression is calm, too calm, perhaps. His hands are folded loosely, resting without tension. You notice the steadiness in him, not the absence of feeling, but the control of it, and slowly, without realizing, you begin to mirror that stillness. Your breath evens, your thoughts soften, the weight of anticipation, instead of growing, begins to settle, becoming quieter, more distant. Like everything else in this place, time continues, unmeasured, uncertain. A faint sound echoes through the corridor, not loud, but enough, a shift, a signal, barely noticeable. Yet understood, someone rises, not quickly, not reluctantly, just naturally, as if the moment had always been approaching, and has now simply arrived. You remain seated, for now, watching, listening, feeling the stillness return. Just as it was before, because here, waiting is not empty, it is part of the rhythm, a space between actions, a pause that holds everything together, and as you sit there, in the dim light, surrounded by quiet presence, you begin to understand something subtle, that the hardest part is not the fight, it is this, the waiting before it. The sound reaches you before the light does. At first, it is faint, barely noticeable. A distant murmur, like wind moving across a wide, open space. It does not feel like noise. It feels like something alive, breathing. Shifting far beyond the walls around you, you remain seated in the dim corridor, but your awareness begins to change. The stillness you had settled into earlier now carries something new beneath it. A quiet tension. Not sharp. Not overwhelming. But present. The sound rises slowly, not in sudden bursts, but in waves, soft at first, then slightly louder, then fading again. It never becomes clear. You cannot make out voices or words. Only the sense of many people, gathered, waiting, reacting to something you cannot yet see. It feels distant, and yet it surrounds you. The stone walls do not block it completely. They carry it. Let it pass through in softened echoes that drift along the corridor, settling into the air like a low, constant hum. You notice how the others respond, not with movement, not with speech, but with stillness, a deeper stillness than before, as if each person is listening, not just to the sound, but to what it represents. Because this is not just a crowd, it is expectation. You begin to feel it. Not in your ears, but in your chest, a subtle tightening, a quiet awareness that something beyond your control is unfolding. And you are part of it. The sound swells again, this time slightly closer, a ripple moving through the unseen space above. There is a rhythm to it, though not a steady one. It rises and falls unpredictably, like waves touching a shore you cannot see, and with each rise, something inside you responds. Not fear, not yet, but anticipation, a readiness that has nowhere to go. Your hands remain still, your posture unchanged, but your breath shifts. Just slightly, slower, deeper, as if your body is adjusting, preparing. Without needing instruction, the corridor feels narrower now, not physically, but in awareness, as if the world beyond these walls is expanding. While your space becomes smaller, more focused, the sound continues, always present, never fully fading. You begin to understand something quietly, that this unseen crowd holds a kind of power, not through force, but through presence, through the simple fact of watching, even without seeing them. You feel observed, measured, expected, and yet they remain distant, untouchable, like a force of nature rather than a group of people. Time stretches, each moment shaped by the rise and fall of that distant sound. It becomes part of your breathing, your awareness, your waiting, a constant reminder that beyond the gate, beyond the light, there is something vast, something that does not know you, and yet waits for you. A sudden swell breaks the pattern, louder than before, not overwhelming, but enough to shift the air. It lingers, then slowly fades again, leaving behind a deeper silence in its wake, and in that silence, you feel it clearly, the weight, not of the fight, not of the moment to come, but of being seen, of stepping into a space where your actions will not belong only to you, where every movement, every breath, will exist under the awareness of many, even now. Before you rise, before you move, that presence has already reached you. It sits quietly beside you. Invisible, unavoidable, and as you remain there, in the dim corridor, listening to the distant, shifting sound of the arena, you begin to understand that the pressure does not begin when you step into the light. It begins here, in the waiting, in the listening, in the quiet realization that you are no longer alone. The days begin to feel familiar, not easier, but known. The rhythm of training, eating, waiting, repeats itself so often that it no longer feels new. And within that repetition, something begins to form, not suddenly, not clearly, but gradually. Through shared time, you start to recognize the others, not just their faces, but their patterns, the way one man always arrives first, standing in the courtyard before the light fully settles, the way another moves more slowly, conserving energy, never rushing, never falling behind. These small details, repeated day after day, begin to shape something quiet between you, a kind of understanding, unspoken, unacknowledged, but present. You do not exchange names. There is no need. Identity here is not built through words, but through observation, through the steady awareness of who stands beside you and how they endure during training. The distance between you remains. Each movement is your own, each effort individual, and yet you are never truly alone, because every action happens within the presence of others. You see their struggles, they see yours, not directly, not openly, but it is understood. There is a man you begin to notice more than the rest, not because he stands out, but because he does not. His movements are precise, controlled, never excessive. He does not try to impress, he simply continues. Day after day, there is a steadiness in him. Something grounded, something quiet. You find yourself watching him, not out of comparison, but out of recognition, because in his rhythm, you begin to see your own, and slowly, without intention, a connection forms, not friendship, not in the way you once understood it, but something simpler, a shared presence, a silent acknowledgement that you are both moving through the same experience. In the same way, one day, during training, your paths cross more directly, paired for practice. No words are exchanged, no gestures offered, only a brief moment, standing across from one another. Before movement begins, it is not aggressive, not forceful. Each motion is measured, controlled, almost careful, as if both of you understand that the purpose is not to defeat, but to continue. There is no anger, no urgency, only focus, and in that space, something else appears, a subtle tension, not hostile, but real, because while you share the same routine, the same food, the same walls, you do not share the same outcome. Only one of you will move forward. At certain moments, only one will be chosen, called, remembered, and that truth sits quietly between you, and never spoken, but never absent. The practice ends as it always does, without ceremony, without conclusion. You step back, he steps back, and for a brief moment, your eyes meet, not long, not deeply, but enough, a recognition, a silent understanding. Then it passes, and the rhythm continues. Later, in the quiet of the courtyard, you find yourself sitting near him, not intentionally, not deliberately, it simply happens, the space between you small, but comfortable. Neither of you speaks, because there is nothing to explain. Everything that needs to be known already is, and in that stillness, you begin to understand something quietly important, that here, connection does not come through closeness, but through endurance, through shared silence, through existing side by side. In a place where words are unnecessary, but alongside that, something else remains, a distance, a boundary that is never crossed, because no matter how similar your paths may feel, they are not the same, they cannot be, and so what forms between you is both steady and fragile, a balance between companionship and separation, between understanding and inevitability, as the light begins to fade and the day moves toward its quiet end. You sit there, surrounded by others who are both familiar and distant, and you realize that in this place, you are never truly alone, but you are never fully together either, and that is what makes it endure. Fear does not announce itself in the ludus, it does not roar or strike suddenly, it moves quietly beneath the surface. Like a shadow that follows each step without making a sound, you sit among the others, your body aligned with theirs, hands resting on knees, feet planted firmly on the worn stone floor. The sun filters softly through the open courtyard, brushing the edges of your shoulders with pale warmth. And yet, inside, something stirs, a tightening in the chest, a flicker in the stomach, a subtle tremor in your hands that no one notices. Because no one is meant to notice, every face around you is calm. Even the most inexperienced trainees seem collected. Their eyes do not betray the anxieties that the mind carries. They do not speak of it. They cannot, and so you remain silent. The fear is yours alone. It rises in the quiet moments, as you wait to be called, as you sharpen your weapons, as you step across the sand. You recognize it not as panic, but as awareness, a steady, insistent sense that your next action will define something greater than yourself. You cannot name it. You cannot measure it. It exists in subtle pulses, in the way your heart beats just a little faster when the wind shifts across the arena, in the way your breath catches at a distant sound, in the fleeting tension of a shoulder or a calf muscle that tightens for no apparent reason, and yet, you carry on, because fear here is not weakness. It is a companion, it teaches. It reminds. It sharpens. In the shadowed corners of the ludus, you notice how others manage it. A man adjusts his stance. Another loosens his grip. A slight exhale, unnoticed by anyone but the self. Every movement becomes an act of quiet control. Even in the moments when the arena calls, and the distant roar of the crowd reaches you, the fear does not vanish. It waits. Lingers. Guides. Shapes you, and in these internal struggles, something else forms, a resilience that cannot be spoken aloud. A courage built not from glory, but from enduring the invisible weight that settles on the chest each morning and night. No one around you comments. No one asks. No one notices. And yet, in the silence, there is a shared understanding. Every heartbeat, every tremor, every suppressed thought belongs to someone who has felt it too. Fear here is not dramatic. It is quiet, persistent, inevitable. It exists in the pause between motions. In the stillness before lifting a sword, in the brief moments when the world narrows to your own breath and the sound of your own mind, you learn to carry it. Not as a burden. Not as a chain. But as part of the rhythm of living here, because the arena waits. The day waits. The next step waits. And so does the fear. You breathe. Slowly. Deeply. Holding it lightly, as you would a fragile object. Not hiding it. Not confronting it. Simply carrying it forward, and as you rise to continue your training. As your eyes scan the silent courtyard, you feel it, the knowledge that this fear is not yours alone, and yet, it is entirely yours to endure. A quiet tension lingers, always beneath the surface, shaping your body, your mind, your every action, and teaching the unspoken lesson of what it truly means to be a gladiator. The sun has begun to sink behind the distant walls of Rome, casting long, gentle shadows across the ludus. Inside the barracks, the air is cooler now. Soft drafts slip through open windows, carrying the faint smell of dust, straw, and warm stone. The day's rhythm has slowed. The clang of weapons, the shuffle of feet, and the quiet murmur of distant voices fade into memory. The gladiators move slowly now, almost in half-light, attending to small tasks. One sweeps the straw-covered floor with deliberate strokes. Another arranges his sparse belongings, sandals, a simple tunic, a worn wooden cup. Each movement measured, unhurried, deliberate. You notice the silence that fills the room. Not oppressive, not empty, but dense with shared presence. Each individual seems lost in their own thoughts, yet aware of those around them. There is an invisible thread connecting all of you, the knowledge of what the day demanded and what tomorrow will ask. Some lie down on simple mats, stretching out on the coarse bedding. Others remain seated, hands clasped or resting on knees, staring at the floor or the walls as if they might reveal some hidden truth in the fading light. The walls of the barracks, carved from heavy stone, absorb the warmth of the day, now giving it back slowly. The soft amber glow of the last sunlight mingles with flickering torches along the corners, casting gentle, dancing shadows across the faces of those present. Every movement, every sigh, every small gesture is highlighted by this quiet interplay of light and shadow. You feel the subtle rhythms of breathing around you. The faint scrape of a sandal against stone. The quiet shuffle of someone adjusting their position. A cough, soft and controlled, breaking the silence momentarily. These small sounds are amplified in the hush of the evening, and yet they do not disturb. They are part of the calm, part of the gentle pulse of life within these walls. You glance at the others and see not only the physical exhaustion, but also the invisible weight of the day's fears, hopes, and ambitions. There is tension in their bodies, but it is subdued, a quiet pressure held just beneath the surface. Each man is alone in his own mind, and yet, together, there is a strange comfort in this collective stillness. As night begins to settle, the room grows dimmer. Shadows stretch, merging with the corners. A faint breeze moves through a small window, rustling the straw and carrying a distant hint of the city beyond the walls. The sound is soft, almost imperceptible. And yet it reminds you that life continues outside this quiet refuge. Some men whisper barely audible words to one another. Words of no great importance, perhaps about the day's training or a shared observation, but even these voices are subdued, respectful of the prevailing quiet. There is no laughter, no clamor, only gentle acknowledgement that the day is ending and another will arrive soon enough. You feel your own body sink deeper into the stillness. Muscles relax. Breathing slows. Thoughts, though persistent, take on a softer hue. The world within these walls is compact, contained, and calm. In these evenings, there is time to reflect. Time to feel the distance between moments, the hours of waiting, the fleeting encounters, the small victories, the silent fears. And yet, all of it exists in balance. The barracks are not merely a place to rest. They are a space to inhabit the quiet pulse of life that continues regardless of glory or defeat. As darkness deepens, and the torchlight flickers more prominently against the stone walls, you realize something quietly profound. Here, beneath the fading sun, among comrades and rivals alike, in silence and subtle motion, life continues. Steady, enduring, fragile, and within that continuity, there is comfort, a soft, enveloping calm that lingers, waiting to carry you gently into sleep. If you let it. The evening fades, leaving the barracks cloaked in deepening shadow. You move carefully among your belongings, not in haste, but with the precise attention that has been drilled into every fiber of your body. The sun has disappeared entirely, and the only illumination comes from small torches lining the walls, their soft amber glow bouncing gently off the rough stone. Each flicker of light seems to slow time, stretching moments into a calm, almost hypnotic rhythm. Your hands trace the warm grip of your weapon. Fingers brush the smooth wood, the cold metal of the guard, the subtle weight that you have learned to carry as an extension of yourself. There is no panic. No sudden surge of adrenaline. Only measured awareness. Around you, the others prepare in their own way. One tightens the straps of his armor, methodically and slowly, as though each movement reminds him of the steady heartbeat beneath his chest. Another runs fingers along the edge of a shield, as if feeling the history of its many battles embedded in its surface. Every motion is deliberate, almost ceremonial, though nothing is ostentatious. There is no show, only preparation. The air is quiet but charged with something unspoken. A subtle energy flows through the room, unmarked by sound, but heavy in presence. You can feel it in the slight tension of your muscles, the rhythm of your breathing, the way your chest rises and falls with careful control. It is the calm before expectation. The pause before action. Your mind does not race. It observes. It catalogues. It senses the coming trial in fragments, the distant crowd beyond the walls, the faint echoes of footsteps on sand, the knowledge that every movement, every choice, will ripple outward in ways you cannot yet see. And yet, this is not fear. Not entirely. It is a quiet recognition of what lies ahead. You tighten the straps of your sandals, feel the fabric of your tunic against your skin, adjust the small pieces of armor so that they sit comfortably. Every adjustment is precise, mindful, deliberate. These small actions, though simple, are like rituals, quiet signals to your own mind that you are ready. Ready to face not just the opponent, but the expectations, the weight of the crowd, and the invisible measure of your own endurance. You glance at the others again. They are calm. Focused. Their eyes do not wander. They do not speak. Each seems lost in the rhythm of preparation, a silent meditation on what it means to step forward, to take the next step, to exist fully in this narrow, tense space between anticipation and action. Time stretches. Each moment feels longer. The flickering torchlight shadows the corners of the barracks, moving slowly across the faces of those around you. There is a solemnity here that is hard to describe, a reverent quiet, as if the space itself demands attention to the weight of the next act. You breathe slowly. Deeply. Feel the blood moving through your veins, the subtle tension in every joint, the steady beat of your heart that carries both life and readiness. There is comfort in the control. Comfort in the preparation, and as the final moments of stillness stretch toward the threshold of the arena, you know, not with loud declaration, not with sudden revelation, but with quiet certainty that you are ready. Ready to step into the light. Ready to endure. Ready to continue the rhythm that has defined your existence here. The preparation is over. And yet, it continues. In every breath, every step, every heartbeat. It is not a moment. It is a state. A calm, measured readiness that exists beneath the surface, waiting, patient, and eternal, and in that readiness, you find a strange peace, a stillness that can carry you forward and hold you steady. In the moments before the fight begins, the heavy doors creak open, a rush of warm air spills in from the outside, carrying with it a smell of dust, sand, and distant fire. The torches of the barracks flicker one last time before the shadows stretch and fade behind you. The world beyond the walls waits, vast and unyielding, yet softened by distance and the gentle haze of sunlight. You step forward slowly. Each footfall on the worn stone seems louder than it should be, echoing faintly, carrying your presence outward. The other gladiators follow in quiet procession, moving like shadows beside you, their movements measured, deliberate, as if testing the rhythm of the arena itself before committing fully to its space. the corridor opens to a sloping ramp, leading into the sand-strewn floor below. You pause at the threshold, letting your eyes sweep the vastness of the arena. It is massive. Its stone walls rise like cliffs, circular and endless in their scale. The seats, empty for now, stretch into faint shadows, rows upon rows of silent stone. And beyond, though distant, you feel it, the presence of unseen observers, the weight of expectation, even in their quiet. The sand shifts beneath your sandals as you step down. It is soft, yielding, yet firm. Each movement is a negotiation between balance and anticipation. The air smells faintly of earth, sun-baked dust, and the faint tang of metal from weapons left behind by others. It is grounding. Real, you feel the subtle hum of energy in this space. Not a roar, not yet. Only the memory of it. The arena remembers. Its stones have felt countless feet, countless struggles, countless moments of life and fear. And now, it remembers you. Your pulse does not race. It is steady. Slow. Measured. Your breath matches the pace of your steps. Inward, outward. Inward, outward. The rhythm is your own, and yet it is in harmony with something larger, something invisible but unmistakably present. You glance at your companions. Each is silent, each carrying the weight of the moment in their own way. Some straighten their shoulders, some adjust their grip on a weapon. Others simply close their eyes for a brief second, centering themselves, drawing on the quiet inner strength built over months of repetition, training, and patience. The sand stretches before you. The sun angles downward, painting the arena floor in muted golds and soft browns, each grain catching light differently, shimmering like a calm sea under a gentle wind. The walls rise like ancient cliffs, mottled with time and shadow. Everything is slow. Everything is deliberate. You hear a faint sound in the distance, not a roar. Not even clearly human. A shifting, an echo, a presence that reminds you of those who wait beyond sight. And in that sound, a tension grows, subtle, almost imperceptible, threading through the space between your thoughts and the arena itself. Your hands tighten slightly on your weapon, not in fear, but in acknowledgement. Every step forward is measured. Every movement carries weight. And with each step, the invisible boundary between preparation and action narrows, until it is no longer outside you, but within. The first rays of sunlight strike the sand fully now, warming the air and highlighting the soft curves and textures of the arena. You pause again, taking in the scale, the silence. The history written into every stone and grain of sand. And in that pause, you feel the culmination of every quiet morning, every shadowed evening, every slow, careful breath, leading to this moment. You walk onward. Slowly. Deliberately. Each step a quiet statement. A measured acceptance. A conscious presence. And as your foot touches the sand, fully within the arena, you realize something quietly profound. The fight is not only what happens here. It is every silent step that brought you to this threshold, every thought unspoken, every fear carried without a voice, and in that realization, you find calm, not victory, not defeat, only presence. The arena waits. And so do you. The arena is no longer a distant thought. It is beneath your feet. Its sand presses softly, almost imperceptibly, into the soles of your sandals. Each movement carries the weight of attention, not just from your peers, but from those invisible eyes beyond the walls, watching, remembering, judging. Survival here is quiet. Not sudden, not dramatic. It is measured, deliberate, and infinitely patient. Each step, each breath, each motion is carefully considered. You do not rush. You do not act without reason. The lessons of months, even years, have been etched into your body. They guide you in subtle ways that cannot be taught with words. Your reputation is equally delicate. A tilt of the head, a pause too long, a shift in stance, these are noticed, catalogued, and remembered. And yet, you do not flaunt strength or skill unnecessarily. To do so would invite scrutiny, even danger. Instead, you move with quiet confidence, controlled precision, letting each gesture carry the weight of experience, not arrogance. You glance at the others. Some move like shadows, careful not to reveal more than necessary. Some hold themselves with the faintest trace of pride, tempered by caution. And all of them understand, as do you, that survival is not merely endurance of the body, it is endurance of perception, of expectation, of unseen judgment, even in moments when the crowd is absent. Their presence is felt. You sense it in the silent echoes of the arena walls, in the memory of cheers and whispers, in the anticipation that permeates every corner of the sand. The arena remembers those who came before and those who remain, and your actions are added, quietly, to that memory. Survival is a dance of awareness. You notice the tension in your own muscles, the slight pull in your shoulder, the alignment of your stance. You observe your opponent, not with aggression, but with calculation. You anticipate. You measure. You wait. Every moment becomes an exercise in quiet control. Reputation is woven from these same threads. A single controlled movement, a silent calculation, a calm response, these leave impressions deeper than the loudest clash of swords. Recognition here is subtle. It is not shouted, but felt. It is whispered in the tilt of a head, the careful assessment in another's eyes, the small nod that passes unnoticed by the untrained, yet beneath it all, there is fragility. No matter how careful, how precise, how quiet, survival is never guaranteed. The sand remembers missteps. The walls remember hesitations. And the crowd, even when absent, carries the memory of what has been, of what is expected, and of what might come. Your hands tighten briefly on the weapon. You do not show it. You do not need to. The grip is natural, familiar. The weight is known. Every movement is a blend of preparation and instinct. And in this balance, you find control, endurance, recognition. These are the currencies of your existence. They are earned slowly, quietly, and without fanfare. Each day adds a layer, each step leaves an impression, each choice echoes through the silent corridors of memory, and yet, there is a rhythm to it all. A calm, measured rhythm that carries you forward. The arena is never frantic. It is never chaotic. It exists as it always has, patient, immense, unchanging. And you, careful and deliberate, move within it, part of its pulse. Aware of the delicate balance between presence and perception, between survival and reputation. You breathe. Slowly. Deeply. The sand beneath your feet. The walls around you. The silent weight of history pressing lightly on your shoulders. And in this moment, you understand, survival is not merely living. Survival is existing with intention, awareness, and quiet control, letting the world see what it must, but never revealing all. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the arena. Your presence, measured and deliberate, leaves its mark. And as the moment stretches into stillness, you feel the subtle satisfaction of endurance, not celebrated, not announced, but known, within and without, by those who understand. Even in the midst of routine, discipline, and silent endurance, there exists a quiet, flickering hope. It is not loud. It does not demand attention. It sits beneath the surface, like a candle waiting to be noticed in a shadowed room. And for a gladiator, it is the hope of freedom, the possibility, however distant, that one day the chains of obligation, expectation, and circumstance may loosen, if only slightly, You lie on your straw mat in the barracks, the evening light soft and pale through a small window. The warmth of the stone beneath you is comforting, grounding. Outside, the faint sounds of the city drift in, distant footsteps, the murmur of voices, the occasional clatter of a cart on stone streets. Everything is slow. Everything is calm, and yet, within, your mind wanders. You imagine a life beyond the walls. A life where your choices are your own, where the rhythm of your days is dictated not by trainers, schedules, or expectation, but by the slow pulse of your own desires. You picture a small home perhaps, or a quiet garden where sunlight rests gently on the soil. The air would smell different there. Cleaner. Softer. Less laden with dust and sweat. This hope is fragile. You do not speak of it. You do not announce it. Others may feel it too, in subtle ways, in a lingering glance toward the horizon, in a quiet pause after training, in the careful handling of belongings as if imagining their worth in a freer life. But each holds it carefully, as if it were a treasure that could be easily shattered if exposed to the wrong eyes. You remember the tales of those who came before, who endured long years, faced countless trials, and yet found their freedom through victory, favor, or patience. Each story is a whisper, a quiet testament that escape is possible. It teaches you endurance, yes, but also imagination, the ability to dream beyond the walls of stone, to believe in the possibility of a life unbound. Even in the arena, during moments of waiting, the thought drifts quietly to the forefront. It is not a distraction. It is fuel. A subtle strength that reminds you that every calculated step, every measured action, every controlled breath brings you closer, however gradually, to the possibility of release. Hope shapes the rhythm of survival. It is a companion to caution, discipline, and awareness. It does not overwhelm. It does not demand action. It simply exists, like the soft light of dawn that slowly brightens a darkened room. Its presence is gentle, but its effect is profound. You rise slowly in the early morning, stepping into the courtyard, your eyes lifting toward the horizon. The air is cool, soft with mist, and the faint sound of distant birds flutters through the space. You imagine what lies beyond these walls, the freedom waiting somewhere beyond the edge of the known. And for the first time today, your steps feel lighter, your posture less burdened, your mind slightly unbound. The hope of freedom is not guaranteed. It is not immediate. It is not tangible. And yet, it persists. It threads through the monotony, the discipline, the shadows, and the sweat. It lives in quiet moments, in soft reflections, in the pause before action, in the calm after exertion. It is invisible, and yet, it colors every choice you make, every silent observation, every heartbeat that carries you through the day. And in that quiet, persistent anticipation, there is a sense of possibility, subtle, calming, and enduring. The world beyond awaits, patient and distant, but always present in the imagination, in the dream, and in the quiet strength of a gladiator's resolve. You exhale slowly. The sand underfoot, the walls around you, the faint hum of distant life, all remind you that hope is both fragile and persistent. A companion that carries you gently, steadily, toward an uncertain but imaginable tomorrow, and in that gentle hope, even the harshest day can feel bearable. The sun has finally dipped below the horizon, leaving the arena bathed in soft twilight. The sand glows faintly in the lingering light, warm and muted, the stone walls casting long shadows that stretch like quiet memories across the floor. The world feels hushed, as if the day itself is holding its breath. You sit quietly on the edge of the arena, shoulders relaxed but attentive, the weight of the past hours pressing gently against your mind. The spectacle that once seemed overwhelming now fades into subtle textures, the faint echo of footsteps, the soft whisper of the wind across the stones, the distant murmur of a crowd long dispersed, and as the sounds fade, you realize something profound. The life of a gladiator is rarely what it seems from the outside. It is not constant action or dramatic displays. It is patience, observation, and quiet endurance. It is measured breaths, subtle decisions, fleeting connections, and the constant balance between survival and existence. Your comrades move past, some heading toward the barracks, some lingering a moment longer, each carrying the weight of their own experiences. Brotherhood and rivalry, fear and hope, discipline and rebellion, all are woven quietly into the tapestry of daily life. They are threads invisible to the crowd, yet vital to the men who walk these sands day after day. You think of the distant future, a life beyond the walls. Perhaps it is freedom. Perhaps it is just another day, another rhythm, another measure of patience. Whatever it may be, you hold it gently, letting it guide you without consuming the calm that has carried you this far. The arena itself is silent now. The walls, once alive with the anticipation of spectacle, now merely contain shadow and stillness. The sand has cooled, the stones softened by fading light, and even the distant city seems subdued in the embrace of evening. In this quiet, you feel a connection, not to glory, not to applause, but to the enduring pulse of life itself. You remember the days that led here, the quiet mornings before sunrise, the repetitive training, the careful preparation, the moments of subtle observation and reflection. Each step, each choice, each breath has shaped you, quietly and inevitably, into someone who understands the delicate balance of existence in a world that demands both endurance and subtlety. And in that understanding, there is calm. A calm that does not depend on the world's recognition, applause, or judgment. It exists quietly, deeply, within you. A companion as constant as the rhythm of your heartbeat, as enduring as the stone wall surrounding the arena, as patient as the sand beneath your feet. The sun has disappeared, leaving only the soft glow of torches lining the barracks and the faint glimmer of stars overhead. The world outside continues, distant and quiet, but within this space, you are entirely present. And as the cool evening air brushes across your skin, you feel a gentle release, a settling of all the tension, all the anticipation, all the quiet fears and subtle hopes. This is life behind the spectacle. Unseen by most. Felt by a few. Known intimately by those who endure, reflect, and survive. A life of quiet depth, of subtle emotion, of gentle rhythm. Not always easy, not always grand, but profoundly human. You rise slowly, feeling the weight of your armor and the comfort of its familiar touch. You walk toward the barracks, each step deliberate, each breath measured, each movement a part of the enduring calm, and as you lie down once more on the straw mat, the shadows of the walls wrapping gently around you, you let yourself drift. Drift into the quiet, the stillness, the gentle rhythm of a world both harsh and tender. Tonight, the arena rests. Tonight, the men rest. And you, in the quiet pulse of this hidden life, feel a deep and untroubled peace. So, good night. Let the world fade gently, let the echoes of the day dissolve softly, and let sleep carry you into dreams as calm and enduring as the sands of the arena itself.